Now we proceed to our next speaker, Maria, journalist from Balkan Insight, an important resource which is even used by me for following the situation in the region. So
I'm really glad to hear that, because I have trouble.
yeah. Due to time limitations, you have 7 up to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't have a presentation, so I'll be trying to follow much shorter than that. To me, it seems, I mean, from my experience working for a regional outlet, is that people in this region of the world do not know each other very well. So we don't know each other at a social level. And I think media should be very important in this area, because this is how we start to get knowledge of each other at a social level. Let's be frank here, like Ukrainians don't know Romanians enough. They don't know what happens in Romania every day, and Romanians don't know what happens in Ukraine every day. And I think we lack at that aspect. And I think media should take a step forward and do something about it. Now, the problem is in most countries that mainstream media is sort of politically affiliated. And for that reason, probably they tend to look more at domestic politics rather than the regional politics. But on the other hand, we tend to know more about what happens in Washington or what happens in Paris, what happens in London, what happens in Brussels, but we don't know what happens in Kiev, we don't know what happens in Bucharest, we don't know what happens in Chisinau or, let's say, Tbilisi. And I think we should work on this regional cohesion more. And I'm talking about this because it's been very difficult for me to work for a regional outlet, for a regional organization that actually covers the entire Balkan Peninsula. And it's been really difficult for me to convince people in Romania that it's important to tell a story in English, and it's important to tell a story in a language that most people in the region actually understand, because we don't read each other. We don't know each other's languages, we don't study each other's languages in school, and that I think this is the fundamental thing for two people to know each other. And I'm talking about cohesion at the regional level because we are all facing these narratives of the Russian media, and we're also facing narratives at the local level. I think social media is important because this is how, let's say in Romania, this is how these narratives are on the market. We don't have, Romanians, for example, don't watch official Russian television. They read blogs. Russia Today, for example, had no success opening in Romania. It closed down a few years ago. Sputnik actually is based in Moldova, but writes in Romanian language. The thing is, we do have unofficial information sources that are actually more penetrant than all these official mainstream sources. And they are using all this lack of knowledge that we have of each other, we don't have of each other basically, to separate us. You would see a certain type of people in a certain part of the internet public that is very affected by news, let's say, Romanian language closed schools in border regions of Ukraine where there's population, Romanian-speaking population. And that's pretty much all we hear from Ukraine. And that is very dangerous because it creates this gap between the two countries. It creates gaps not only with Ukraine, but other countries in the region. And I think that's where everything should start. We need to work together as journalists more. We need to do cross-border projects, and we need to actually cover regions and topics that are of regional importance. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation and for what you do. And indeed, it's very important to have this cross-border cooperation projects and people-to-people and networking. And to some extent, the Facebook group that Angela mentioned at the very beginning serves this because indeed the people who are belonging to the group can just fact check because of knowing each other in person and because of trust in each other in person. It's very important.
And knowing each other's politics and politicians and
yes,
the dynamics of society.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess we need to elaborate a little bit more and to discuss more on it. But now I will give the floor to our last but not least speaker, Mr. Vitaly Moros, head of new media at Internews Ukraine and a good friend of mine in my university group. Vitaly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here. It's my first time being in Romania, and I have like very many new impressions, and some of them I'll share with you. I work for Internews Ukraine as Ukrainian non-profit, and we are very focused on technologies, on cybersecurity, and also on research. And we have researched information warfare. We have a couple of publications. I'll share later with you, but I will start with technology issues. Yesterday we were in Yashi, and on our way from the hotel to the airport, we used app Uber to get a car, and we had a very smart driver. He had new BMW. He spoke English. He was very smart. He was very young. But when we get to the car and we're driving to the airport, we noticed that navigator was in Russian. He didn't understand like the Russian, but he used a navigator which has like Russian pre-installed, like at least version. Maybe it's not Russian software. And this is a story about accessibility of technologies. We usually don't care about technologies. We get technologies very easily. We install apps on our smartphones without not asking where is it from, what is the privacy data which we share with apps, and all this like leads to what happened in US elections in 2016 and Cambridge Analytica. And technologies, they play a significant role, and I know that Romania is a very IT country. There are thousands IT specialists working for tech giants. But at the same time, I have heard that within the local authorities, there is no like good cyber teams which can protect local councils, local authorities. And this is like a huge gap. But it's mostly because this discourse about technology is quite new. In Ukraine, for example, we are very aware about any kind of Russian technologies, and probably many of you might use like Kaspersky Lab as an antivirus protection, which we consider as dangerous. We consider dangerous Russian social networks and search engines like Yandex. Ukrainian government even stepped forward and made very doubtful decisions of blocking Russian social networks and biggest websites in Ukraine. On the one hand, human rights defenders attacked government and said, hey, there is a freedom of speech and you shouldn't block any websites. Internet can be blocked. On the other hand, NATO, they said, okay, that's your business. We understand like security risks and you to decide what to do. So in particular, with the technologies, it's always a balance between security and freedom of speech. And if you come to European Parliament, probably the discourse will be more about freedom of speech, freedom of internet, rather than about security. And each country should respond on their own. But I also like show you example how technologies can be misused on the case of Facebook. A couple of days ago, Facebook blocked 4 big pages which were run by a German-based company, and these 4 big pages, Facebook pages, one of them was about environment, second about history, and probably 2 of them about popular video targeted on views. This video were in English. All the pages were the language was English, and it was focused. It was targeted American audience, specifically through viral video. What is interesting? Why they were suspended? Because the final beneficiaries of these pages were in Russia. It was Russia Today. But the content was produced in Hollywood. Officially, the registration was in Germany, but the founders and money came from Russia. And it shows that we don't usually know who owns apps, who owns pages. And this idea, which Katarina and Anna mentioned, this is also what we recommend in our policy paper for the government, for the EU Commission. Follow the money, investigate where is the funding sources of any kind of suspicious activities, and also name and shame. If you identify those who manipulate, you should talk about it openly. Don't be afraid that you will be criticized, that you are attacking freedom of speech. If we talk about manipulation, it's not like journalism. This is something else. Also, I like to mention that we live in democracies which invented technology. So Western countries invented technologies, and West believes that technologies can be used for good. And the history shows that technologies can be misused, first of all, by authoritarian countries, because they always looking for vulnerables of democracies and see the weaknesses to fire back. For example, advertisements. If you have elections and political parties might use ads in Facebook. And the idea of any elections is that any particular candidate should have one message to all audiences, to pensioners, to youth, because if you have different messages to different audiences, it means that you portray yourself as a liberal and conservative. Within political parties, it shouldn't be. And social networks, they let you advertise specifically on very concrete target audiences. That's why how politicians may target their ads to different audiences with different messages. And now there is a big talk about technologies and about self-regulation and co-regulation of tech giants. And your government, the government of Romania, should step forward and communicate to tech giants. In Ukraine, we see that this dialogue is now being set. And we try to communicate with tech companies and trying to explain them what is the nuances of Ukrainian situation, because many users in Facebook in Ukraine were blocked, for example, because Russia employs the tactics of monitoring all the posts, even posts which were published 5 or 6 years ago, identifying the sensitive words and sending thousands and thousands of user reports. And users might understand why they are blocked. I like to sum up with a memory about what was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, on these days, Crimea was annexed by Russia. And if you remember how it was happening, once on the streets of Crimea, on the cities of Crimea, appeared armed men with no insignia. They were called so-called green men. Being without insignia is a violation of international laws, but nobody immediately perceives them as Russian soldiers. There were debates, maybe this is like self-defense, maybe this is people, locals who just bought their uniform within some stores. The same happening with social media, with the internet. There are no insignia on the pages, on the apps, which will definitely tell you that there is a threat. So you should always investigate what what is the sources of this information, what is the beneficiaries of pages, web resources, and messages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we are already behind the schedule, but we started a bit later, so I guess we will have at least some more time for questions and answers. So and as a moderator of the session, I would like to raise the first question, and this goes to all the speakers. Maybe any one of you who wants to comment, that you are welcome. The point is that in most of the presentation, it was mentioned that we should investigate, we should follow the money, we should check and double check. But my question is about investigators. How we verify that the investigators are providing us with the real, true information, not false information, not misinformation or disinformation. So, if there are any receipts for that. Thank you. And you may think first about this question, and I will also pick some more questions for the audience if there are any. Yeah, please take this up. So, first, Mike.
After you or?
Yeah, please.
My question is, you presented us very well research about the Russian media. Do you apply the same methodology for the Ukrainian media? Are you monitoring also the Ukrainian media to find the echoes or whatever it's, I don't know, nationalist messages and so on?
Okay, any other questions from the audience? Yes, please. And name yourself, please.
Journalist for Voice of Romania. As far as I know, the Ukrainian government has blocked those Russian stations to talk about. So they don't air at the moment in Ukraine.
Yes.
And also the government has blocked many websites, many researches, and how has this aspect has been debated in the Ukrainian media? How has the Ukrainian public that was reacted?
Thank you. Anybody volunteering to answer?
The question about social media and TV stations. Yes, Russian TV stations were blocked from airing, and it was perceived positively. Even though like Ukrainians may get access to Russian TV channels through satellite, and many households like have satellite TV, but public opinion is quite unified regarding like blocking, because there is nothing more than propaganda translated on the Russian TV stations. Russian websites, search engines is more sensitive because technically internet can be blocked like 100%. Ukrainians have learned how to use anonymizers, VPNs, and they can access any blocked Russian websites. But still, it was a kind of political decision. It was doubtful from the perspective of how it is legal, because the president of Ukraine, who signed the sanction decree, like they were blocked under the sanctions, because Ukraine sanctioned Russian companies which run these websites and social networks. But the idea that president is not a regulatory body for IT industry. So many ISPs, internet service providers, they still can provide access to Russian websites. And experts community is quite divided. Those experts who take into account security risks for the country, they say that strategically the decision was right, because during the tens of years, Russian social networks and websites were dominated, and quite happened because when Ukrainians start using internet, There was Cyrillic internet and Western internet Latinic, and many Ukrainians couldn't understand how to register like in Gmail, how to use Google, and like only like 5 or like 10 years ago, all these Western services they start using like Cyrillic. That's why Ukrainians massively went to Russian social networks, and like many civil society organizations, they called, hey, Russian websites are dangerous. They collect your personal data. All this information is accessible to Russian intelligence services, but this voluntary calls from civil society, they didn't work. And it happens that when you have like these regulations, like more than like 30 to 50% Ukrainians quit using these networks.
Thank you.
I would very briefly just add, the question is that, first of all, it was explained that in several European Union countries, the same regulations were adopted. So in this case, it was not seen as just the nationalistic position of one president. The second is that definitely, I can't say that immediately it was the support of the public of everything, because definitely we had certain amount of public who used to what they had, especially social networks. Several things worked. Not only Cyrillic language, that definitely helped for many to move. When information started to appear, how this information is used, or for example, when people started to see that in the social networks, the groups created to gather money for weapons for Donbass. So when people started to see the exact examples how social networks or certain websites are used, it's definitely worked. And with the TV, probably 70% of population watched Russian TV before because of the entertainment, not because of news. The news, less and less people started to watch, not even 2014, but earlier, because of the content. You saw the wonderful example. Unfortunately, it was before 2014 with the same messages, maybe with the less amount with the same messages.
That's radicalized, I would say, but definitely it's the same.
Yeah, so that's why less and less people watched as news, but as the entertainment. As soon as Ukrainian media started to be, let's say, as soon as our entertainment programs became of the same good quality, for people like Voice of Ukraine or Talent of Ukraine or these programs, they were just no interest to watch Russian because they wanted their own stars. That's comparing to Moldova, because we will have it here on the next session. The problem was Moldova can't move like this because they don't have the same quality entertainment. When we started to have our movies, our soap operas, our TV shows, less and less people started to worry that they can't reach it. Because it is, for average people, definitely it's not the political reason, it's more what is more interesting for them to watch.
I will actually provide you with some figures and how it changed over the years, both with television and with online services and websites. So first of all, before 2013, because we started blocking TV stations, and it wasn't, with TV stations, it wasn't even the decision of the Verkhovna Rada or Parliament or the President. It was also by the regularity body, which is controlling the radio and television in Ukraine. So the viewership of the Russian TV stations all over Ukraine was around 26%. With a decrease right now in the latest data that we have from the year 2017-18, still mostly 7% of Ukrainians, they still watch Russian television via satellite because it's still possible. You don't have a complete blockage of those TV stations. But what is important is that the trust in the TV stations is also measured. So even for people, so for the 7% who are still watching Russian television, only 1% still considers Russian television as a trustful source of information. So this is really very much echoes very nicely with what my colleague Anna just said, that people still watch it because of some soap operas that used to run for 10 years and you just can't let it go, then you want to have the main characters married and so on and so forth. But even although it is possible that some people are still watching Russian television, the trust is very low. Another thing which was very much measured during the last 5 years is the success of Russian narratives on television. And it's very much intertwined with Ukrainian television as well. So the narratives that were pushed through the television and why the television was blocked in the first instance, because it was complete madness, Ukrainians don't buy it. As long as it comes about Maidan was a coup d'etat, Crimea rightfully returned to Mother Russia, and there was civil war in Ukraine, there is a public consensus around roughly 60 to 80% that it's not true. The most clear consensus in Ukraine is regarding Crimea. For 92% of Ukrainians, this was a illegal annexation and Crimea should be returned. With social media and websites, this was very critical and very sensitive issue for Ukrainians for a very long period of time, because the discussion was sparked and it was divided into two divisions in a way. So it was, some people were saying that this is the security matter and this is how Ukraine actually supported, not supported, defended this decision. And surprising fact that the very first ones to support this decision of Ukrainian authorities were NATO, saying that yes, indeed, we understand all the different limitations, but for us it's mostly the security issue with private data. And for example, the things that I know from my military colleagues, the most critical thing was actually using Russian navigators. For you to understand, how people sometimes aren't aware of the seriousness of the issues Ukrainian soldiers fighting in Donbass, sometimes were using Yandex, so like the search engine, and also maps provider, while they were at the front line. And there are some data collected that prove that sometimes their movements were leaked, and sometimes the positions of Ukrainian soldiers were leaked because they were using smartphones that were using Russian social media or Russian websites. That is why this indeed has a very strong security component behind it. But obviously it also started discussions in Ukraine whether from the perspective of the freedom of speech, freedom of opinion sharing, it is, whether it's a censorship or not. There is rather a consensus over these years that it's not about limiting the freedom of speech, because it's rather limiting the medium. You can still say whatever you want on YouTube or Facebook and so on and so forth, but the platform where you can actually show your points of view has been a little bit limited. But we still have, as Vitaly said, the problem with VPN and the legal fact that there is a void in the legal system in Ukraine. So on one hand, we had ban of those websites and social media, but there is no legal punishment for you as a user. A provider who hasn't blocked access to those websites can be punished. No? Not yet? Okay, so even the provider is not punished, and you obviously as a user is not as well. Kontakte, so this Ukrainian version of Eastern European version of Facebook, as everyone is calling it, to be the #1 website in Ukraine. Over the last 2 years, ever since the ban started working, Ukrainian top 10 search has incredibly westernized. So now #1 is Google, then YouTube, and then Facebook. Currently, Kontakte is 17th with an audience of 4 million, still people using it in Ukraine. Facebook has roughly 14-15 million people, so we still have a huge gap. So many people, they have indeed switched the social media, although the biggest increase after the ban of Kontakte was with Snapchat back then a few years ago, and also Instagram. So those are the social media that work the most. And a few days ago, I mean, the freshest analysis from NATO of Kontakte users in Ukraine, in the government-controlled territories and also in occupied territories, provides a very interesting insight that indeed there is a great amount of people who have left Kontakte, but still there is 4 million people who are actively using them. And this is a problem because, I mean, they are living in a way in information chambers, because the groups are still very active, the networks are still very active, but they have been incredibly radicalized. Interesting figure that when people started migrating from Kontakte to Facebook, the number, I mean, the general mood of the talks in Kontakte has incredibly radicalized and ideological. I mean, there is more talk about ideology. Roughly right now, based on the NATO measures, about 56% of all the discussions that take place in Kontakte from Ukraine, they're about political issues, they're about ideology, they're about Ukraine moving to EU or to NATO. So I think this is with social media, and first of all with Kontakte, this is quite a problematic issue. I still support the decision of the ban. I think it was a good one. With all pros and cons, I think it was important to cut Ukrainians from such an incredible channel of information, of disinformation. But on the other hand, the problem is that we introduced the ban, and we in a way forgot that those social media exist. And I think it's a bit underestimation from Ukrainian side that we still leave those millions of people who are using it maybe daily or maybe once a month, still networks that exist and that are very strong across the country, which are feeling themselves being eliminated a little bit from the public discourse and who are radicalizing. So I think there should be more attention from the side of Ukrainian authorities, but also experts, to those communities who still exist in Ukraine.
I will try to be brief. My colleagues actually have covered the majority of points on the issues of social media and television, and Katya is actually reading my mind probably because she mentioned the exact information from the latest report that I wanted to talk about. So I'll just give one small remark regarding the abuse of personal data on Kontakte and Odnoklassniki. Members of military personnel and members of their families have been under what you could call a form of cyber attack because they were actively using Kontakte and Odnoklassniki. There were numerous examples, unfortunately, when personal data, including phone numbers, of these people was stolen. And then this personal data and phone numbers were used to send them threatening messages to soldiers and to their children, to their wives, to their parents. They often received messages of rather disturbing content, like soldier, I'm really sorry to say this, like soldier, you are just meat to your government, or soldier, they will find you in the spring when the snow goes away. And of course, this affects the general mood and capability of armed forces very much in a very negative, dangerous way. So this is the first point I wanted to make. And we talked a lot about how trust to Russian television was fortunately declining. But I'd like to point that while this is a good tendency for Ukrainian audience, unfortunately we don't have the same tendency when it comes to Russian audience. Russian audience still enjoys these channels very much, and they trust the information they see there every day. They trust it very much. So what is important for us as a conclusion is a general tendency of media radicalization and all these narratives that we've seen today and that we've talked about as being used for preparing the audience and people in Russia for what could be called a trend for militarism. So when people are under such pressure, they are easily accessible to the militaristic trend. And I think that I'm rounding up. I think there was a question about whether we track Ukrainian media. I definitely agree, and my colleagues have mentioned this, that we should pay attention to what happens at home for two reasons. Because local politicians sometimes may use the same techniques, and we have to keep our governments in check. This is the job that civil society must do, and that we try to do. And because a lot of people in Ukraine still watch Russian television, or some Ukrainian channels, either knowingly or unknowingly, often promote the same narratives that we talked about today. So it's definitely important to watch what's going on in our backyard as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we can.
Final remark about Ukrainian television. Yes, because we have those searches conduct. There is an organization, Detective Media, which is monitoring many Ukrainian TV stations. They are measuring whether there are, first of all, the quality of channels, because sometimes there are too many politicians of certain political party on one TV station, but also they are measuring whether there is some interlinks between the Russian narratives and Ukrainian central TV stations. We don't have that much problem with the biggest TV stations. It's rather about the manipulation of certain oligarchs groups and their editorial policies. This is the problem for Ukraine. But now in the times of the elections, there is thorough analysis which is being conducted by both the Council of Europe and Atlantic Council. And there was a report also by the Detective Media, and it's available in English as well. And they have presented the results of their last 2 months monitoring, like week by week, how the narratives changed and how they intertwine with the ones that Russians are spreading.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Question, please. Actually, my colleague rejected our web page because it's banned in Ukraine. So I let you know that this, I think, it's a technical issue. It's not a political issue. I don't think that there is a government involvement in that. And my question is for Produța and Hannah. You are both coming from the region. I mean, Produța from Cluj, Transylvania, and Hannah from Odessa. Is there a difference between local disinformation and national disinformation? Because here in the capital city, we are exposed to national disinformation. Thank you.
Please be very short in your response.
Thanks a lot. You know what is interesting? It's not that much disinformation, it is more about gossips. It is another way, another instrument. We made a big research in Odessa region 2 years ago, and we asked what source of information do you trust? And it appeared that 30% of the population in the villages and small towns, they trust to the information from friends, as we call it, because when you ask do you trust gossip, definitely people say no. So that is the problem that disinformation on the national level, or what is going for the whole country, it is less targeted. First of all, I mean, it's coming for the whole country. For regions, you can find more sensitive issues. But there, it sometimes can quicker be disseminated and spread and bring the panic. Because when it's on the national level, you have more chances and more possibilities to check or just to switch another TV channel. When 30% of the population trusts gossips, and that is the question of regions, it is much easier to manipulate on the local level than it is on the national level.
Very briefly, what I've noticed is that there are certain local news outlets which are very few because Romania has lost its local journalism for the last years. But there are these small local newspapers that they act as a distributor for larger organizations as parties or as politicians. So they would be a small beacon at the local level that would send a message into the community. And then again, what I've noticed is that when you're on Facebook, there's no national or regional level. But what I've noticed again is that small communities, isolated, are far more sensitive to conspiracy theories, for example.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I would like to express my gratitude to all the speakers. And just summarizing a little bit this session, I wanted to emphasize that probably the main message of this session is not the fact that Ukraine is facing challenges and Ukraine is trying to combat challenges. I guess the main idea of this session is to let Romania know that I know that Romania is trying to promote this image of the island of stability within the unstable region. With Hungary, with its autocratic state, with Serbia, with its heavily influenced by Russian Federation. And Romania is some successor in this regard. But for Russia, there is no sense in any islands of stability. So Russia tries to destabilize. And perhaps that's why one day all this information shared by my Ukrainian colleagues and my Romanian colleagues will become relevant for Romania as well. And that's why you should be prepared for such a challenge. Thank you very much, and I do believe that our speakers deserve for another round of applause.